what advice I would give to young people who are just starting in this best of all possible worlds. If you love what you do and you really, really want to do it, then embrace it with all your heart.
She was the voice behind some of the most beloved movies ever made. The woman who could light up a screen with a smile and hit notes that seemed impossible. Julie Andrews is now 90 years old. Just let that sink in for a second. For generations, Julie Andrews was practically untouchable. But these days, the legendary star lives a very different life. No constant red carpets, no packed concert halls, no endless Hollywood appearances. So what really happened to Julie Andrews, and how is she spending her days now? Broadway didn't just discover her, it stopped for her. Julie Andrews was born on October 1st, 1935, and from the very beginning, her life already felt slightly unusual, like it was headed somewhere bigger than the environment she came from. Julie Andrews didn't become famous the normal way. There was no slow burn, no years of struggling in obscurity while waiting tables and auditioning in the background. Her rise was more like the industry suddenly noticing, mid-sentence, that something extraordinary was already standing in front of it. But the real story starts earlier than Broadway. As a child performer in Britain, Julie was already doing things most adults couldn't manage. Her voice wasn't just strong, it was almost unnervingly controlled. She could hit notes with clarity that made people in the room go quiet without meaning to. That kind of reaction doesn't get ignored for long. And it didn't. She was performing in music halls while still a kid, sharing stages with adult entertainers, which sounds charming until you realize how intense that environment actually was. It wasn't polished theater. It was survival in front of an audience that could turn on you instantly. One bad performance, and the room changes on you. Julie learned early how to never give them a reason. That discipline became her foundation. By her teens, she was already being described in industry circles as impossibly gifted, which is the kind of phrase adults use when they can't quite explain what they're watching. She wasn't just singing songs, she was controlling rooms. And that control is what eventually carried her into the London stage world, where things started shifting fast. When she transitioned into musical theater, she didn't ease in as an understudy or background name. She was noticed almost immediately. Casting directors didn't treat her like a newcomer. They treated her like a problem they needed to solve. Because when someone is that naturally gifted, the question becomes, how do you structure a show around her without everything else feeling smaller? Then came My Fair Lady. And this is where her early story takes a sharp turn. On stage, she wasn't just playing Eliza Doolittle, she was defining the role. Night after night, audiences weren't just watching a character arc, they were watching Julie turn a transformation into something almost spiritual. Her performance had this strange duality, raw vulnerability, wrapped in technical perfection. But while she was becoming Eliza on stage, something else was happening behind the curtain. Hollywood was circling, and when it came time to adapt My Fair Lady into a film, the assumption inside the industry was simple. You cast the biggest box office name you can get, even if that name isn't the person who built the role. So Julie was passed over. The role went to Audrey Hepburn, and for a moment, that could have been the kind of decision that quietly ends a rising career. The industry had basically said, "You're brilliant, but not marketable enough for the big screen." But here's where things get interesting. Because instead of fading into that rejection, Julie doubled down on what she actually had: presence, discipline, and a voice that couldn't be replicated. And Hollywood, almost unintentionally, handed her the perfect response. Disney came calling, not for a supporting role, not for a test, but for a lead character that didn't even fully exist yet in public imagination. Mary Poppins. And the moment she stepped into that role, everything about her early struggles, her theater discipline, her stage precision, all of it snapped into place like it had been building toward that exact moment. But what people often miss is this. By the time she became Mary Poppins, she wasn't new. She was already trained by years of pressure, rejection, and perfectionism that started long before fame ever arrived. And that's what made her dangerous in the industry sense. Because when someone enters Hollywood already fully formed, the system doesn't know how to control the trajectory anymore. It just has to watch it happen. The woman who once had it all. And this is where everything clicks into place. She didn't walk into Hollywood as a blank slate. She walked in already built. Disney didn't discover her talent. They aligned with something that had already been tested in real time for years. That's why Mary Poppins didn't feel like a gamble. It felt like inevitability. Like the industry finally catching up to someone who had already been operating at that level long before film cameras got involved. And the moment she stepped into that role, everything that came before it, the childhood performances, the theater grind, the rejection from My Fair Lady, it all snapped into place like a straight line she had been walking without realizing where it was heading. Because that's the thing about Julie Andrews at that point in her life. She wasn't rising anymore, she was arriving. If you grew up watching movies, chances are Julie Andrews was part of your childhood. Long before social media influencers and streaming stars took over, Julie was the definition of a global icon. She became a household name thanks to Mary Poppins and later The Sound of Music. Those films didn't just succeed, they became cultural landmarks. For decades, it seemed like Julie could do no wrong. She had elegance, charm, talent, and that unforgettable voice. The kind of voice that could fill an entire theater and leave people with goosebumps. Hollywood loved her, audiences loved her, critics loved her, and perhaps most importantly, she genuinely seemed to love performing. That is why so many fans find her current lifestyle bittersweet. Not because she is suffering through some secret tragedy, not because she's battling a confirmed major illness, but because the woman whose life was once filled with music and public adoration now spends most of her time quietly at home. It's a dramatic contrast. For someone who once stood at the center of global attention, Julie Andrews has become remarkably private. But how did one of the most visible stars in entertainment end up living such a low-profile life? The heartbreaking loss that changed everything. If you ask most people when Julie Andrews slowed down, they'll probably point to age. But the real turning point wasn't age at all. It was her voice. If there is one event that completely altered Julie Andrews' life, it was the loss of her singing voice. And honestly, this part of her story still hurts. For decades, her voice was her superpower. It wasn't just beautiful, it was legendary. Then came a medical procedure intended to help remove non-cancerous vocal issues. Instead of restoring her voice, the procedure resulted in permanent damage. The outcome devastated her. Imagine spending your entire life mastering a gift that made you famous around the world, only to lose it. That is exactly what happened. Julie has spoken openly over the years about the emotional toll. The rehabilitation process was long and difficult. The reality that her famous 4-octave range would never return was something she had to slowly accept. Fans often assume aging was the reason she stopped singing. It wasn't that simple. The loss was sudden, unexpected, and deeply personal. Many people define themselves through their careers. Julie Andrews was no different. Singing wasn't just a job. It was part of her identity. Even though she continued working in other ways, including voice acting, writing, and occasional appearances, that chapter of her life never truly returned. And perhaps that explains why many fans describe her later years as sad. Not because she lacks success or family support, but because she was forced to say goodbye to one of the things she loved most. After the vocal surgery and the gradual step back from musicals, Julie Andrews didn't chase replacement fame. She pivoted, and this is where her second career quietly began, the one most casual fans don't even fully recognize. She moved into narration work, writing, children's books, and voice acting. Yes, voice acting, which is almost ironic considering everything. She became the narrator of Bridget Jones's Diary, appeared in The Princess Diaries as Queen Clarice, and later returned for its sequel, becoming a kind of royal mentor figure in pop culture all over again. But notice something subtle here. She stopped being the center of the story and started guiding it instead. There's a pattern in Hollywood that nobody really talks about. When major stars step back, people assume they've been pushed out. But sometimes they just choose less noise, less chaos, less of everything demanding performance on command. So when people say, "she disappeared," it's not entirely accurate. She didn't vanish. She simply relocated her energy. But still, public perception is a funny thing, because once you're no longer everywhere, people assume something went wrong. Which brings us to the question everyone whispers but rarely asks directly. If Julie could no longer rely on the gift that made her famous, where did she turn next? Why she vanished from the spotlight? Here's where rumors usually begin. A celebrity disappears from public view, and suddenly the internet starts writing its own stories. Over the last several years, Julie Andrews has rarely appeared in public. Every time a new photograph surfaces, people immediately start asking questions. Is she sick? Is she struggling? Is something being hidden? The reality appears much less dramatic. Julie simply prefers privacy. At 90 years old, she isn't chasing publicity. She isn't trying to trend online. She isn't interested in attending every award show or celebrity party. Instead, people close to her have consistently described her as doing well and enjoying a quieter lifestyle. Of course, fans aren't used to seeing icons disappear. When someone spends decades in front of cameras and then suddenly steps away, the absence becomes noticeable. That's exactly what happened with Julie. Her rare appearances have become events because they are so uncommon. Some reports even noted that a recent video appearance was her first public appearance in roughly 3 years. 3 years. Think about that. For a celebrity of Julie Andrews' stature, that's practically disappearing from public life altogether. But does staying out of the spotlight automatically mean something is wrong? Not necessarily. In fact, it might simply mean she's finally living life on her own terms. Still, one recent appearance sparked an entirely new wave of speculation. And that's where things got interesting. The Parkinson's rumors that wouldn't go away. On the 7th of May, 2026, Julie Andrews delivered a pre-recorded message for the World Parkinson Congress in Phoenix. Almost immediately, headlines started circulating. And as often happens online, people began connecting dots that weren't necessarily connected. Some viewers assumed Julie must have Parkinson's disease herself. Others treated the appearance as some sort of health announcement. But there is a major problem with those assumptions. No official diagnosis has ever been announced. No representative has confirmed Parkinson's disease. No verified source has reported that she has the condition. The purpose of the message was to raise awareness and support research. That's it. Yet, the rumors spread anyway. It's a reminder of how quickly speculation can take on a life of its own when it comes to beloved celebrities. The public sees a rare appearance. They notice age-related changes. They start worrying. Then theories begin multiplying. For Julie Andrews, the Parkinson's speculation became another example of fans trying to understand why they rarely see her anymore. Ironically, the very appearance meant to help others ended up fueling discussions about her own health. The facts remain straightforward. Julie participated in a Parkinson's awareness effort. She has not publicly announced having Parkinson's disease, and major coverage of the event focused on awareness rather than personal illness. Still, if Parkinson's isn't the issue, what health challenges is Julie actually dealing with these days? The reality of life at 90. Here's the thing nobody escapes: aging. Not celebrities, royalty, or even Hollywood legends. Nobody. Julie Andrews turned 90 in October 2025. That's an incredible milestone, and according to reports from people close to her, she's doing remarkably well. But that doesn't mean she's frozen in time. Sources have mentioned the usual aches and pains associated with aging. She has reportedly been seen using a walking stick on occasion. For some fans, even seeing that was emotional. After all, we're talking about the woman who once twirled across hillsides singing about music and adventure. Time catches everyone eventually. Yet what's striking is how positive many descriptions of Julie remain. Words like healthy, fit, and doing wonderfully continue appearing in reports about her. That's a far cry from the alarming rumors that occasionally circulate online. The reality seems less dramatic and more relatable. She's 90. She moves a little differently. She prefers staying home. She values comfort over public appearances. Honestly, many people at that age would probably make the same choice. One of the strangest things about celebrity culture is that fans often expect famous people to remain exactly as they were decades ago. But life doesn't work that way. The young woman from Mary Poppins became an older woman. The older woman became a grandmother. And now she's a 90-year-old legend enjoying a quieter chapter. But retirement hasn't completely stopped Julie from creating new projects. Far from it. She never really stopped working. This is one of the most surprising parts of Julie Andrews' story. Even after losing her famous singing voice, even after stepping away from regular public appearances, even after reaching an age when most people would have retired long ago, she's still creating. Julie and her daughter, Emma Walton Hamilton, have built an impressive partnership over the years. Together, they have written children's books and continued developing creative projects. Their latest picture book, Shy, is scheduled for release in August 2026. Think about that for a second. At 90 years old, Julie Andrews is still putting new work into the world. That's pretty remarkable. While many fans focus on what she can no longer do, Julie seems more interested in what she can still contribute. And perhaps that's one reason she has remained such an admired figure. She adapted. When singing became impossible, she found other creative outlets. When constant public appearances became less appealing, she shifted toward private projects. When Hollywood changed, she changed with it. There is a lesson in that. Some people spend years fighting change. Julie appears to have learned how to work with it. Of course, having family nearby has also played an important role in her later years. And that may be the biggest reason she seems content, despite everything she's lost. The quiet life she chooses today. Let's be honest. When it comes to celebrities and Hollywood legends, people often expect a scandal, a shocking diagnosis, some type of family feud, financial troubles, or some secret disaster. We're used to fame being loud, constant, visible. But Julie Andrews' reality is both simpler and more emotional than that. She lives quietly. She spends time with family. She works on projects she enjoys. She avoids unnecessary public attention. In many ways, it's a peaceful life. Yet, there is still a sadness that hangs around the story. Not because Julie herself appears unhappy, because fans remember what once was. They remember the voice, the performances. They remember seeing her everywhere. Watching a beloved icon grow older can feel strangely personal. We struggle with the idea that icons age into stillness. We want them frozen in their prime, singing in perfect pitch forever. But real life doesn't work like that. Even legends eventually sit down. People project their own memories onto stars. When Julie Andrews ages, audiences are reminded of their own passing years too. That's partly why her story resonates so deeply. The woman represents an era that continues slipping further into history. And yet she remains here, still thoughtful, still creative, still admired, just quieter. Maybe the saddest part isn't how Julie Andrews lives today. Maybe it's the realization that time eventually changes every legend, no matter how iconic they once were. Julie Andrews may not be standing on stage singing to sold-out crowds anymore, but the truth is far less tragic than many rumors suggest. At 90, she's living a private life, staying creative, spending time with family, and choosing peace over publicity. The loss of her voice was undeniably heartbreaking, and watching a beloved icon grow older can be emotional for fans. But Julie's story isn't really about decline. It's about resilience, adaptation, and grace. Julie Andrews' life right now is a bit more layered than expected, because what looks like absence from the outside might actually be peace on the inside. But I'll throw it back to you. Do you think we unfairly expect our icons to stay frozen in time just to make us comfortable? Or is stepping back like this actually the most human part of the story? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I want to know where you land on this one. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And also, share your favorite Julie Andrews movie or performance of all time in the comments. I absolutely love to read those comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.